the last session, and I think we have the people who really participated in the meeting. So. Okay, it's time to start the last session on the fostering the talent in for the science and technology. We have a very exciting session and with a very good, very prominent speaker in this session. As an introduction, I'd like to open with a few issues that is in the science and technology in current world. I said global issue and challenges, and hopefully this will help you to orient yourself to the issue that we'll discuss today. In recent years, we have tremendous technological breakthrough, for example, in the area of microelectronics, telecommunication and biotechnology, nanotechnology in terms of manufacturing technology, as well as logistics. Through this new technological breakthrough, and we have a tremendous progress in various parts of the world. But if you look at the demographics, currently the population is order of 80 million right now, with increase in 25% since 2000, but it's a highly imbalanced. For example, 50% in Asia, 16% Africa, 11% of Europe and US. But it is expected that if we continue to have such a growth rate, and then by the year 2020, people expect that it can be around 10 billion. Also, the birth rate is there's a regional imbalance, and some part of birth rate is order of 7 to 8. Some part like Korea, its birth rate is only 1.2. So there's a strong imbalance over around the world. Also, another very serious issue is in advanced country, there's aging is progressing very rapidly, and worldwide urbanization is spreading and intensify further. So I think currently the local issue has been there's a very strong very intensified imbalance between the region. Some area remain even more poor, and some area is. So there's a tremendous imbalance in terms of development globally. But however, on the other hand, because of the widespread of internet and the free trade agreement spreading around the world, and emerging large new power like Brazil and Russia and India and China, and currently the new addition to the global scene, like Korea joining the so-called G20, there's a strong globalization force. So such a local issue is not anymore the local issue; it's a global issue. So if I summarize the global issue, current issue that faced by the world, is, for example, climate change is a big issue, and energy shortage is another issue, and food shortage, water shortage, water pollution, and disease, widespread of disease. For example, the new types of the flu is an excellent example, and the widespread of the terror. So under this, so we have a global challenge. Challenge is we need a development, for the development, how how to achieve the sustainable development in the future via scientific and technological innovation. That is the current issue, and maybe that's a background theme of this particular forum. So in order to meet that challenge, university has to play an important role. The reason is important. Universities are breeding ground of the innovation. Today, in this forum, the general theme is how to achieve a creative education for all human beings, and so particularly this session is centered on fostering the creative talent in science and technology, its need, model, and strategy. Today we have an excellent and very prominent speaker from around the world. The first speaker will be President Ralph Eichler from ETH Zurich, and prominent former provost of Stanford, Dr. William F. Miller, and HR director, global HR director of Corning Company, Richard A. O'Leary, or Dr. O'Leary, and then the professor. And then we have two speakers from Korea. First is Professor Sejong Oh in Seoul National University, and Yoon Kyung-ha, a professor from Hongik University. So I would like to first introduce you Professor William Miller. From this order, Professor William Miller, he is talking about how to foster the global talent in the area of science and technology. Dr. Miller, can you come forward? Can you give him a big hand?
Well, President Back, thank you very much for that introduction. I have a short introduction of myself. I put my whole professional life on one page, and that's a pretty good trick for somebody at my age. I'm about to be 84 years old, and to get it all on one page, I think, is a pretty good trick. You can see there that I've spent about half of my professional life in business and about half in academia. And on the left, you'll see that some of the things I've done in academia. On the right, you'll see some of the things I've done in business. I think I've been trying to please my parents all my life, because my father was a farmer, a business person, and my mother was a college professor. So you see, I've been trying to do a little bit of each, and perhaps couldn't make up my mind which I should do. But I like to point out on the right, that last company where I was the chairman and founder of a company called Lumiet. And the reason I point that out is that I started that about a few days before my 82nd birthday. And why that's important is we often talk about young entrepreneurs. You don't have to be young to be an entrepreneur. You can be an old entrepreneur like me. And if you miss that chance when you're young, you still have a shot at it when you're old. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to tell three quick stories about creativity and fostering creativity. The first was about a friend of mine who was receiving an award for being a visionary. This is Vinod Khosla. Vinod Khosla is one of our most successful venture capitalists in California. There are 4 people getting awards at this particular ceremony for being visionaries. The first 3 stood up and spoke about the epiphany when they had this great vision, and they created a company, and they went forward from that, and how they were recognizing that they were doing something really new. When Khosla stood up to speak, he said, you know, as a visionary, I just bungled around until I got it right. And what's the message there? The message there is creativity comes in lots of different ways. Sometimes people do have a vision, and a creative vision, and sometimes people just bungle around until they get it right. And I think there's a lot of experimentation in creativity. Creativity comes from trial and error, and this is what Khosla was telling this group at that meeting. Second story is about my meeting with Bill Hewlett when Bill Hewlett was one of the founders of Hewlett-Packard. I went to Stanford in 1964. I was introduced to Bill Hewlett in 1968, And this was a time when the Hewlett-Packard Company was making a transition between being an instrument company and being a computer company. Those are two quite different corporate cultures, the instrument company and the computer company. And I was supposed to know something about computers, so Bill asked me to be an advisor to him. But when I first met him, he said, well, Bill, I want to tell you something about Silicon Valley. You're new to Silicon Valley, and there are three things that you should keep in mind. First, it's okay to change your job. Now, he didn't change his job. He kept the same job for a long time, but he said, it's okay to change your job. Second, he said, it's okay to talk to your competitors. And the third thing, he said, it's okay to fail. And what was he saying? Well, in the first, when it's okay to change your job, he's talking about mobility of the workforce. You want a mobile workforce because people learn as they move from job to job. A mobile workforce is a very good thing. And he thought it's okay to change your job. Second, he was saying it's okay to talk to competitors. What he was saying, you learn from other people. That was the beginning of the ideas of open innovation, where you learn from other people. You don't give away your trade secrets, of course, but you do learn a lot from talking to competitors, and there's a collective learning that's important. And the third thing, he said it's okay to fail. What he's saying is a lot of creativity comes from trial and error. You try something, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but trial and error. The third story is about Stanford. I have a lot of visitors. I'm kind of the old guy around there. I've been in Stanford about 40% of the lifetime of Stanford, about 45% of the lifetime of Silicon Valley. So when we have visitors, they send them to me to talk to about the history. I had a visiting group from a university in China about 2 weeks ago. I was talking about Stanford, its interaction with Silicon Valley, these kind of things. And at the end, one of the speakers asked me, what is so special about Stanford that makes it such a creative place? So I was well prepared for that because I just completed an oral history of my time in Silicon Valley and at Stanford. So I said, there were 5 people who really set the standards and set the spirit of Stanford. The first was the founder. The founder was Leland Stanford, named the university after his son, Leland Stanford Jr. He was a pioneer, and he was a great contributor to the early ideas of Stanford. Second was the first president of Stanford, David Starr Jordan. He had the same ideas. He wouldn't have been recruited if he hadn't had the same ideas, but he had the same ideas. The third was a man named Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover was in the first graduating class at Stanford. He was a mining engineer. He went to Western Australia to develop the gold mines in Western Australia. Then he went to China, to the Shandong Peninsula, and developed the gold mines there. He learned to speak Mandarin. He later became president of the United States. Herbert Hoover had a terrific impact on Stanford. He helped create 3 of the major institutions at Stanford. He was a trustee for a long time. He was a pioneer. And then one of the presidents he recruited was Wallace Stirling, who became president just after World War II. Wallace Stirling was the one who took Stanford from being a regional, mostly California institution, made it a national institution. And then with him, Fred Terman, who was the provost when Stirling was president. And Fred Terman is the one who had this idea of the university industry community, and he fostered the interactions between Stanford and Silicon Valley at that time. So those are the 5 people who had this impact. And what they did, they endowed Stanford with a restless pioneering spirit that pervaded the faculty, the students, and the staff. And that restless pioneering attitude is still there. That's the spirit. That's the setting for creativity, a pioneering kind of spirit. So let me talk a little bit about the steps toward a high-tech economy. And I won't have a lot of time here, and I'm a disciplined speaker, so when you wave your hand, I'll be able to stop. But there are several steps we have to take toward building a high-tech economy. First, it's obvious you need to be in the knowledge economy. That's the growth part of the world economy. But secondly, to participate effectively, you have to have the fundamental resources for a high-tech economy, the research-trained scientists and engineers that create the innovations, but also you need the entrepreneurs who turn these innovations into business. Those are most often not the same people. They sometimes are the same people. Most often they're not. The talents for creating and innovating and creating new ideas are different from the talents for managing and turning those ideas into business. And then you need a favorable habitat. This morning I spoke about the importance of habitat. Yesterday I was listening to a number of the human resource people talking about the importance of context. Habitat is in a way the context, if you like. It's the business, the social, and political environment that fosters innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. There's a lot of power in creative talent. We're learning that today. The creative talent continues to capture increasing disproportionate returns in terms of compensation relative to the rest of the labor force. And you'll see this in Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, the per capita income is 50% higher than the nation as a whole. And largely that's because we have a large number of people in these creative jobs. In fact, the creative sector, that is the high-level design, deal-making, financial things, consulting, research-directed, those are the fastest-growing jobs in Silicon Valley today. Creative talent includes not just the scientists and engineers, but also includes the creative business managers who create new business models. Over the last several years, over the last decade, we've seen a creation of a lot of new types of business models. Those are very creative ideas. Creative ideas on how to do technology transfer. Those are important ideas. I want to come back to that. The effective use of tacit knowledge. Knowledge has not been formalized. Capturing these ideas that are in the heads of people, the tacit knowledge, that's important. And of course, effective technology managers. Silicon Valley is very much a talent-based economy. There was a report in the San Jose Mercury News, the local newspaper, on August 3rd. You can't read the date there. It's August 3rd of this year, where they say Silicon Valley reinvents itself. Silicon Valley has gone through a number of transitions of reinventing itself from the early days of the radio vacuum tube to semiconductors to computers to software to the internet and now into the clean tech area. And the reason it's able to do that is because we have this tremendous concentration of talent. And this is a report from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And what it is telling us here is there's a tremendous concentration of talent in these particular areas. For example, in the very top, in computer equipment manufacturing, what it's telling us here is that the per capita numbers of people in this particular area is 27.8 times that of the nation as a whole. 27.8 times as many per capita working in that particular area. And you take that whole group as a whole, averaging about 4.8 times the nation as a whole. That's a tremendous concentration of talent. And that is why we get these very high returns. Universities are very key entities in today's technology development. They don't only carry out the fundamental research, but they produce the research-trained scientists and engineers. Those are very critical. Universities are in the midst of change. They're changing everywhere in the world, and they're under enormous pressures to do a number of things, including how to contribute to the economic welfare of a region. At this point, I always point out, however, the first role of a university is to become a good university. And that was brought out to me by Sir Eric Ashby, who was the provost at Cambridge University, and influenced my thinking a lot when I was provost at Stanford. And he said, he was a biologist. He said, we're living through one of the classical dilemmas of systems and evolution. They must adapt themselves to the consequences of success or they will be discarded by society. But they must do so without shattering their integrity, or they will fail in their duty to society. What he is really saying, you must decide what you want to change and what you want to preserve. And that's the most difficult task for a university president today, to decide what and how to change and what and how to preserve what's important. We got a couple minutes. Well, I'm going to go very quickly to the end of my couple minutes here. I want to talk about a couple things that we do at Stanford that helps facilitate development of creative talent. And this is done at a lot of places. Stanford is not unique in this, but we have a program called the Biox Program, which brings together scientists from medical school, from biology, chemistry, physics, engineering, computer science, lawyers, business school, all working in the same building, working on various interdisciplinary problems that arise largely in the biological area. And the building is designed in such a way to facilitate their interaction. There are little pockets of places where people can go and work together and meet each other, getting coffee and social things. That facilitates this interchange between them, and it gives them the ability to attack some of these very critical problems. And another program we have is the Design Institute. And here, students are required to put together a team from different disciplines, for example, business and engineering, or maybe law, or maybe with chemistry, and work on major problems, for example, making technologies, small technologies for developing countries or for rural farmers and so forth. They're very challenging problems. And one of the ways you foster creativity is to give students problems for which you do not know the answer yourself. So the management of technology becomes very important, and teaching scientists and engineers not only technology and teaching not only science, but how to manage it. Silicon Valley is a place that knows how to turn technology into business. It's not about technology development. It's about turning technology in business. So bringing together the engineers with the business kind of skills that are needed to turn technology in business is another way to foster creativity in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. And next, let me introduce the next speaker. Next speaker is the Professor Ralph Eichler. He is the president of ETH Zurich. Please welcome him with a big hand.
Will that be the presentation? Do I have to press? It's not coming.
You can, maybe you can.
Ah, yeah, okay. Here it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will give a similar talk as my previous speaker in European language. Say what universities are good is transforming money into knowledge. That's what we call research. But the second step is to convert then the knowledge into money. And this is what I call innovation. It was called before turning into business. But you see here a correlation with the GDP and the publication intensity of a country. And if the GDP is low, these are numbers from 2004. Don't look at the particular countries. The message is at low GDP, there is a clear correlation with scientific activity, but it saturates at one point. So you need more than just scientific knowledge production. The innovation part is more and more important if you have reached a certain level. There's a peculiarity in Switzerland in the education system. Let me make shortly excursus. After the year of 12 years, after primary school, you have to make a decision if you are more practical orientated, you go the left branch, or you're more theoretical interested, you go to the right branch. Left one, you go secondary school and then apprentices in a company, so you learn the skills, the handcrafts. These are people who then also are very important in companies, also in science, to build the devices. Some of them make the matura of profession and go to the University of Applied Science and go to profession. On the right track, those are people who after gymnasium, these are only 22-23% of the population. After the examination, they can enter any university, any field of science or humanities. And for instance, in our university, after the first year, they have to go through a tough education in mathematics and physics. And if you pass these tests, you can stay and continue bachelor, master, and PhD. You see, Switzerland, compared to the average of the OECD countries, has the lowest number of people going to enter university. But at the same time, this is a country, at least in Europe, with the lowest unemployment of young people. So really, they're not all people going to university find jobs if there are too many. So we make a really tough selection. Only those who really are good for the academic life, and those who then succeed, they find a job very easily. And the others go to practical training, and this is also very important for our industry. Our students come from everywhere else in the world. Of course, the center of gravity from Europe, but from Asia, from America, North and South America. So we have an international faculty and international schools. Faculty, 60% are foreigners in the faculty, 60% of the PhD students are from foreign countries. So this is really a mixed society, having cultural input from all over the world. Now, what do we have to change in the university? The traditional professors like to be self-sufficient genius. They believe they are the greatest. They just need enough resources from the president. But the grand challenges in modern science and engineering need, besides these top specialists, people capable to work in transdisciplinary teams. So the grand challenges are modern cars, fuel-efficient car, fuel cells, batteries, lightweight electronic controls. So somehow we don't know yet which of the technology will win on the market, but the good ideas probably will win at the end, input from specialists. Then what was called in the previous talk Biox, we call it system biology, a paradigm change in biology, thinking with mathematics, with physicists, with chemists, with engineering, all in the same building. So this is a new way, quantitative biology, to understand our life. Future cities, especially in Asia, more and more larger cities will be built, and we have to think about building technology, but also have to plan the traffic, the move, the dynamics of the city, the flow of water, the flow of energy, the flow of waste, the flow of people, what we call mobility, recreation areas. So you have to have the holistic view. And there are always cross-cutting issues, materials, intelligent electronics, information technology. How do we foster this interdisciplinary project? We form competence centers. CCM, this is competence center on energy and mobility. Then there's a competence center on environment and sustainability, on materials, on system biology, on modern electronics, and for the future city, collaboration with Singapore. So the challenges are knowledge and expertise have to be acquired, and we should start with a marketplace of ideas. So different disciplines come to solve a particular problem. So we always invite the company to it. They tell us what their problems is, and then for half a day we select ideas. Then about these 20 or 30 ideas which are produced in half a day, we select 5. In the second half of the day, we reduce these to more specific projects, and at the end of the day, the company, together with the university, selects one project to what we should do. Somehow the good ideas have to win. We need a convincing idea. So you have to come prepared with results from simulation as a professor, results from prototypes, of course, experience, reputation of the research accounts, and of course, one needs also a quality control externally, which is done with the Swiss National Science Foundation. I come from particle physics, high energy physics, where we used to work together with 400 physicists in one particular project. And if you are selected that you can produce part of the apparatus, you have the privilege to finance it. And then they come to the president and say, look, if you don't give me the money, then the whole project will fall apart. You have no chance to say yes. Then there are social challenges, recognition of performance, enlarged interdisciplinary team. You see, in a career in past academia, you give freedom, little structure, you publish or perish, you give scientific results, recognition through publications, you give invited talks, so success in a discipline is possible. But if you develop a new method, a new hardware, new tools, then of course it may take several years until you have the breakthrough, and you don't publish in this time. So in physics, we have learned that we also should allow some of the brightest people to think and work and do research for several years without any result, but then the breakthrough comes. In biology, we still have to learn that because the culture is different. You have to publish all the time, and to build big apparatus, it's not a tradition, but it will come. But once you worked in such an environment, you are very well trained for industry and business. You have worked in the international team. You have learned to deliver in time, deliver within budget. You have learned a systems aspect, presentation skills, which you all have to do if you work in large groups. So that's a very good job market for PhD students and postdocs. So the paradigm change has to start in your heads. We still need excellence in discipline. Teaching and research in discipline will continue. The homes are the department. And most professors are willing to engage in this grand change only if there is extra money available or if they invented the project themselves. So one has to give some seed money, have to be attacked in larger teams across department boundary, even across institutions. So we give seed money, and of course the management of the school has to acknowledge the effort in the grand challenges. And the students are very important. They are not so fixed yet in a discipline. So the students are the glue of the project. But the students, the young people want to have adventures, like the first man on the moon, but that's already done, or the North Pole to be discovered, that's already been done. So what is left for the young generation as challenges, as dreams? So we give the students difficult problems, and of course not only difficult problem, but the competition is important to set also time scale that you also have to learn to finish in time. Not with infinite time, you always can make the great discoveries. So we have team building and project management at the same time. Complex projects given to the students, I give you later on a few examples. You need, of course, the scientific engineering knowledge, which you learned in your first or second year, but then the innovative ideas has to come. Then you have to manage the project, to find donors, find the money, project controlling, design to cost. I myself had to learn the best project, the best device is not what you sell on the market. It has just be good enough because the best is usually too expensive. So let me finish with giving you a few examples. One is the task to play football on 1 square millimeter. So robots on 1 square millimeter have to move and put the ball into the goal. So on the right side you see a track. There are little robots, stick and slip. They move very fast back and forth, and they turn left and right by changing the magnetic field under the football field. So there is a competition worldwide, and our team has in 2007 and 2009 World Championship of Robocop Nanogram. So they also have to be on time when the World Cup is available. The device has to work. Another one is a Formula Hybrid project. for the third year of the bachelor, to have electric engine, to have fast acceleration, combine high efficiency of the electromotors with enormous energy density of the hydrocarbons, because batteries, the energy density per kilogram in batteries is very low. So to combine both electric power and the high energy density of hydrocarbon. But you also want to reduce the CO2 emission, energy consumption, so this is the challenge, to be fast, on time, but efficient. Adventure number 4, to build a car with the lowest energy consumption. This is a world record, a car which can drive 1,000 kilometers with 1 liter of gasoline equivalent. 5,000 kilometers with 1 liter of gasoline equivalent. So we had to find the lowest weight student, that was a female, to sit in the car, and a very lightweight car with a fuel cell developed at the institute, and this was also a competition where they had fun at the end. Another project which is now in the making, design and construction of an unmanned, completely autonomous sailboat to cross the Atlantic, to invent modern fish. How can the fish move so fast in water? Can you build a robot with the same performance as the fishes? This is, of course, not yet achieved. Nature is still ahead of us, but this is a difficult enough project that it's fun for the students. And let me stop with a real mountain hat. This was a competition of different architecture groups at our school to build a new mountain hat at 3,000 meter elevation in harsh environment. It's very cold in winter. There's little water. You have to be 90% of the energy should be produced by the house itself with photovoltaics. It's also an experiment for the control system. We take into account the weather forecast for the next days. Can we use the energy in the battery stored, because tomorrow there will be sunshine and we can recharge it, or should we be careful and use the auxiliary diesel engine? So this is built, inaugurated this year, with 120 people can stay there overnight, and usually then they go out the highest mountain. In the back you see the famous Matterhorn. But also water recycling, energy from photovoltaics, sophisticated control system. It's not only an architecture project. It's a project with civil engineers, with control system of the mechanical engineers. It's really an interdisciplinary project for students. Really had to compete who wins the competition, and then it is really built at the end. So they can really be proud that they achieved something. So student teams, this is my message, with difficult project, teaches them how to be innovative and understand a little bit also the business world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very interesting talk. Thank you, Dr. Eichler. And next speaker is Dr. Richard O'Reilly from Corning. He's Global Director for Human Resources. Dr. O'Reilly.
Well, it's a real honor to be here, and I appreciate all of you who are here late in the day. There's a couple things I really appreciate about the prior speakers. One, it's okay to have fun when you innovate. Two, innovation is a social construct. It takes ideas, working with people, reacting to people to create a foundation of application that ultimately can be commercialized. And this is exciting for me, and I hope it's exciting for you, because as we stand in this world today, it really needs a lot of innovation. So every one of us is needed to make this a better world. And I'm enormously excited about that possibility. So a little bit about Corning. Corning has a long history of taking a look at innovation. We are based in Corning, New York. We have a really cool building. We have a lot of employees, and we like to make innovation work. Some of the innovations that we've caused to be a part of the world that we're both proud of and acknowledge that you can never get to the future by looking at the past, is to work with Thomas Edison to help create the glass envelope for the light bulb, to work and invent silicones and then partner with Dow Corning or Dow Corporation to create a joint venture to commercialize silicones. So Corning has done a lot of joint ventures. One of the ones I'm proud of in Korea is Samsung Corning, where we took our technology and we partnered with Samsung to create some possibilities in Korea that would support the growth and development of a business based in Korea that would have profound worldwide impact. In glass ceramics, we've done some pretty cool stuff around the topic of substrates for catalytic converters, and I'm happy to acknowledge that some of the people sitting up here presenting also have an interest in that same technology and continuing to help us expand the base of what we know to create good things for the world. In the topic of Pyrex or glass, high temperature glass, Corning was, again, an innovation leader in that. We created the glass envelope for the picture tube, and that involved a shift in technology as well as a lot of what I'll call applied work around how do you commercialize innovation. We invented the process for fusion draw glass, which is an air-bearing float mechanism for glass, and that helped to revolutionize, in partnership with Samsung and others, the ability to do large, pristine flat-screen TVs. We were one of the inventors of optical fiber and partnered with a number of different organizations, governments, and technology forums, most notably in Silicon Valley, around how do you take this invention and commercialize it in a way that's practical. And I think the process of innovation for Corning is really the foundation for our future as well. So one of the things I liked about the speakers talking about is how do you as a company match or leverage the wonderful knowledge that is becoming present in the world, combine that within a commercial organization to drive success that not only benefits Corning the company, but actually makes a difference in the world. And so we invest about 10% of our gross revenue in innovation, as I note, 4% in research and new business development, and 6% in applied innovation, which I'll call development and engineering. One of the positive things about proof of concept or proof of evidence is if you invest in something, what's the world think about it? And one of the things we're very proud of at Corning is we're listed as one of the most innovative companies in the world in the areas that we play. And I'll also note that you'll see that Samsung is also listed as one of the most innovative companies in the world, and I think that's very much the credit of the country of Korea and the innovative people here. So the recognitions for that, although recognitions are good, they do not define tomorrow. They just validate that you're probably on the right track. So things that we think, because innovation is a social construct, it's nice to get the National Medal of Technology. It's nice to have affirmation of that you have good product and process control within quality. It's nice to have magazines like Fortune recognize you. It's nice to have organizations like or publications like Fast Company recognize you. But I think the other things that are also really nice is when people talk about your ability as a company to be a corporate citizen. One of the things I helped drive in our company in Corning was the idea of a 5% MBO, where anyone in the technology community within Corning can volunteer in the community to make a difference and have that fit with the social construct of invention. So they could volunteer in the schools, they can volunteer in their church, they can volunteer in any number of capacities as long as they have a process, and that counts as far as their commitment to service to the community as well as their ability to do their job at work. That then gets reflected in our social consciousness, which ultimately looks like things like getting awards for how we treat diversity, any number of diversity of thought or diversity of practice or diversity of background. And that adds to the overall topic of people like us, and they think we're one of the best companies to work for. Joan Popovich, who's one of the people, who's one of my peers in the audience, really worked very hard in China with the leadership there within Corning, and Corning is recognized as one of the best companies to work for in China. And so I think the topic of innovation, of how we leverage talent, is a social construct. So attracting the best people is a foundation, and I like the idea of flexible critical mass that people have talked about within Silicon Valley and elsewhere, is getting good people together. They like being together, and if you let them commingle and incubate and work together, they like to create. It unleashes a wonderful dimension that we're all built with, is we like to make a difference in the world and we like to create. So bringing really competent people together does make a big difference. How you do that is as important as what you do, and I'll speak a little bit about that. So 3 fundamental points that I think are the foundation of creativity is people like to belong to something that matters. If you want to have creativity, you absolutely need a climate of trust. You need a climate of respect, and you need a climate of inclusion. It is nice when everyone walks out of your buildings every day and choose to come back, that they think that they are work at a great place, and all the social metrics around that matter. The other thing that I think is something that we at Corning have leveraged pretty well is we've really tried to break down silos so that no matter what your background, whether you have a physics background or an optical background or a chemical background or organic chemistry background, that you think that what you do matters, and you can talk to a physicist about an optical problem distinct from what your background is. And we call that assign talent to the highest best use and leverage the diversity of skills and backgrounds to come up with new ways of thinking. And so I would say that you put bright people together who bump into each other and have common interest around making a difference, and they use their voice in a way that matters. So from a people practices standpoint, which is really the core of this conference, my sense and the sense of our company is it's important to have good data, good processes, to have really foundational ability so that you can show people the structure and the processes that will support their success. And there is an old saying, that Lao Tzu said. He said, many people confuse the finger with the way. So the tools and the mechanisms should support success. They are not there for their own sake. And I think in human resources, it's really important that we understand that we create things to make a difference for scientists or practitioners or innovation or commercialization. It's not just there so that we can have cool stuff. And it has to be applied, and it has to make a difference. So what you get a sense of is that success in leveraging talent has a lot of components to it. The right people, the right roles, the right time, effective people planning produces ways to look at and assess talent, ways to make sure you have enough talent, really good partnerships with universities, really good partnerships with scientific centers, whether it's in Taiwan at ITRI or it's in Singapore with some of the government-facilitated research capabilities. All of those things matter, and they have to come together. And there is an enormous amount of discipline in being patient and working across boundaries and listening to people and opening yourself up and your corporation up in such a way that you take a lot of risk, but what you create is a climate and a culture of openness that where people want to create positive things. I found that for scientists and engineers, this may be a busy chart for you, but one of the things I wanted to point out to scientists is they did not need to leave the scientific role to become a manager just to get ahead. So I was part of a process within our organization that is primarily peer and management driven to create promotion committees and things like that, where people would nominate and promote their peers in a process of success that allowed a career ladder that was criteria-based, that was not time-based, that caused people who made significant contribution in a technical way to be able to recognize and receive recognition for that, and actually compensation and status for that among their peers. And so in our corporation, we have a band process that goes in what we call the technical support area, which is the AA through CC, and the management and or professional area, which goes from A to F into an executive ranks. So within our process of growth, we can help people define a career or a set of careers where people can go back and forth and do different things based on their interest. But their success would not be limited by having to manage other people. So in common terms, I've said, why would I want to wreck a perfectly good scientist and make them a manager, right? Because scientists create an enormous amount of value. Engineers create an enormous amount of value in a technical process. And this is an example of having to think out of the box to create an organization that is flexible and supportive of recognizing good talent. Another thing that is important around creative people is if you're trying to innovate and bring something to commercial success, and I think it was said before, is different skills are needed at different points. So for example, on the creative or the what I call the invention side of the house, I have had people who were project managers come to people who were inventors and say, when are you going to get this invention done by? When are you going to make this breakthrough? And we think we should, have your pay associated with being able to produce at this point in time. Well, that's not necessarily how a scientist thinks. And as a matter of fact, it's not, it's very difficult to schedule invention. And therefore, the idea of competition, where something is playful, something is team-based, something is driven, actually does create a synergistic drive to bring something to the next state of observation or reality. And so I really like the ideas around how do you take competition, make it playful, and then you fully engage the whole person. Then they really want to drive something, not for the sake of somebody to have a profit, but for the sheer joy of creating something wonderful in the world in a way that they are proud of with their peers. So there's the numerous tensions around how do you manage creativity, how do you manage organization so it's not overly burdensome, how do you support having active communication but yet some definable process, how do you move from ambiguity to certainty as you start to manage the process. And so if you take a look at the ideas to opportunities from a commercialization standpoint, one of the things that people need to be mindful of is as you go down the path of commercialization, for example, in our display business, to build a large display business factory, a big factory for this, is about $1 billion. It's some rough change around that. And so we have to partner with organizations like Samsung for or in how we jointly share the risk in doing that. So once you're building a factory, that's not the time to invent new ways to do things. You've got to have a very strong process discipline in that, and that's what this tension reflects. Thank you. People have already commented on how do you attract outstanding people. Well, you have to be in relationship with key universities like Stanford or in Zurich or INSEAD or universities in China or Korea. Anywhere around the world, you need to be where the talent is. And you need to understand that how do you create a community around the global talent. The second is you need to find a place where people want to work, where you can ultimately are continuing the process of hunting for and hiring the best people. When I came into the role I had within the technology community, we had an 8% rate of voluntary attrition. The last 4.5 to 5 years, we had less than 2% rate of voluntary attrition. And that doesn't mean that everybody was perfectly placed in that environment, but it meant that we had to continually listen to our employees to say, how can we make this the best place on earth doing this type of thing? So I think if you take a look at the culture of innovation from a practical standpoint, the innovation process requires enormous respect for diversity of thought and a strong understanding of social interdependency. It really requires that all people involved have a line of sight to what does it mean to commercialize and an understanding of the fundamental concepts of commercialization, like a business case or a value proposition, or just a good understanding of how things work and move downstream. All people involved in management need to understand that innovation is a patient business. It takes a long time to create a new product. It takes a long time to invent something that ultimately is practical and usable in the world. And that involves the best thinking you can possibly get from every angle that you would consider, so very out of the box. And last but not least, it has to be guided by a set of constructs or values. And Corning has had a long-standing set of values that it really believes and it practices, and Joan and others have been very careful in saying, how do we interpret these values in a place like China? How do we interpret these values within Korea? How do we have these values all around the world, but how do we make them practical and real for the people in any specific environment? So the bottom line from the standpoint is really open decision-making, transparency of risk, a good global network of people dedicated to advancing and making cutting-edge decisions, leveraging the best that's out there, so very good environmental scan of who's doing what in the world, and really a sensitivity to the culture as it changes, whether people call it about Generation X, Generation Y, Generation whatever, older, younger, working together. All of those things need to be considered and held in this big vessel that makes people feel wanted and included. And then within that, to make sure that your talent process is clear and clean, that the capabilities of tomorrow are always on the horizon, not the current job. And I want to thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's conclude the three presentation, and then we have two discussion panelists from Korea. First, let me introduce Professor Sejong Oh, Seoul National University. Okay.
Thank you.
You have about 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.